Welcome to our bi-weekly threat management office hours. This is an opportunity for anyone to come and ask us questions or start discussions with the threat management team, which includes the threat insights group, the container security group, and anything that's just about the sub-department that threat management is involved in. So, Philippe, you have our one agenda item today. I'll let you go ahead and verbalize it.
I feel like a special guest today. That's great. Thank you, Lindsay. So yeah, we're trying to deal with the CI configurations lately. We discovered that some of the secure jobs were not running in the way that we were expecting them to run. So we're trying to correct the course here. And one of the first steps that we're going to do is try to own these jobs. And that's probably going to cross another issue that you're working on. I'm thinking of the one where we can see the failures directly in the dashboard. Like if some of the secure jobs were failing, and I probably asked some questions in that issue.
Do you mean the badge that's already live? So on the project dashboard where we display the history of the pipeline and the failed job with the badge on the pipeline? Or
it's already live?
Yes.
I haven't seen that. That's great. Awesome.
But that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, just checking.
Exactly, because right now the process on our side is very manual. It's a bit tedious. We're going through the dashboards one by one, and we have a rotation among the engineers. We're one engineer every week, and every day we'll go to every dashboard, checking that everything is fine. So I'm pretty sure if we don't raise job failures and everything in there, that could be unnoticed for a while. And we definitely don't want to have jobs failing going under the radar, especially with the number of projects that we are monitoring. So we're going to create a roadmap around this topic, managing the CI configuration, making sure that everything is working the way we are expecting it to work. So that's one of the steps as well. And one of the other steps, just to share that with you, will be to write some requirements on our side to say, okay, if you want to enable SAST on the project at GitLab, that means you need to include the template, the official template. You need to use the official image. You can't override the image. You can't override the script. If you touch anything like the after script or the before script, we need to be looped in. You know, all that kind of things. And the problem is, if we use the code on errors features, even if we put all the secure jobs in a specific file, you could always define a new variable at the pipeline level or directly in the CI configuration. You can update rules somewhere else in some other files that would also impact these jobs. So we want to have this global overview that we will programmatically check and enforce, so that if you change a rule in the CI configuration and that breaks what we want to see in the secure jobs, that's going to break the pipeline directly. We're going to tell you you're doing something wrong there. Please don't do that. You're going to mess up with the secure jobs, and we definitely don't want that. Even if you're not doing that on purpose, you can just update a global rule in the CI configuration, and that would mean no job is working anymore. And I'm sharing that with you because this week and last week, we've seen some configurations where the jobs were there in the CI configuration. So everything was checked on our side with a very nice green check. And actually nothing was running. And we didn't see that until last week when we were deeply involved in the CI configuration, trying to understand why this new job that we were configuring was not reporting anything. That's because actually no job was reporting anything. And that was an issue. So we can't have that in the AppSec team, having some blind spots like this. But that's not really an issue. That's more something that I wanted to share with you, and that will probably open some more questions about your roadmap and our roadmap and how we can conceal the two. Any thoughts on that, comments?
Yeah. So I have some good news and some bad news. Good news is that this is a problem that we're trying to solve on our roadmap. In fact, that's one of the many reasons that we created the new security orchestration category in GitLab. So solving this problem is included in that. That's one of the exact problems that we're out to solve. Right now, we are still figuring out how we're going to approach this from an architecture and design perspective and solution perspective. So take what I have to say with a grain of salt, because it's in flux and it may change. In fact, it's changed almost every week for the last few weeks as we've tried to figure out what the right solution is here. But in the back end, our latest thinking is to store security policies in the database. And the way this would work is that those security policies would essentially be, it would boil down to a YAML configuration, but that security portion of that YAML would then be applied to that GitLab CI YAML file at the very end. So it would override everything that's there, including any before script or after script that they may have put in. So someone can still turn on their secure jobs by editing their GitLab CI.YAML file, but you can also do that by editing the database through the new policy UI. And the policy UI will take precedence over the GitLab CI YAML file. So that way you can be confident that if you've configured it in the policy UI, that's going to overrule anything that someone else may have introduced in a before or after script. So again, we're still figuring out a lot of details there. That's just the latest and greatest thinking. But the good news is that we're working on it. The bad news is that it's going to be a long time before we actually have a solution for you, just because, you know, right now we're ramping up the team. We're working to get fully staffed. We've got a lot of underlying design that we need to work out. You know, it's not something that's going to come out in the next 2 or 3 milestones for you, but longer term, we hope to address that. Does that solution sound like something that would work? Would it solve your problem, or do you see other challenges with that solution that I described?
I would say yes, but that's very, very high level. So it's hard to say it's going to solve our problem. And anyway, we already plan to solve that problem with the issue that I've shared. That's not a lot of work. The only thing that is missing for us is the ability to define dynamic approvals. Let me share that issue with you. So that's the kind of flexibility that is missing for us.
Right. So the approach that we would be taking is to have approvals for policy changes would now be entirely separate from approvals for your GitLab CI.YAML file. So the security team would no longer have to gate those, because there are going to be a lot of GitLab CI.YAML file changes that you don't care about at all, that have nothing to do with security. So we would be making it so that instead you just gate the changes that happen to the database through the policy UI. And you don't have to worry about the GitLab CI.YAML file anymore. So our proposed solution would remove the need to use code owners in this case, if you're trying to make sure that a secure job stays on.
Perfect. So that's definitely something that will be interesting for us. That answers this problem that we have currently, but again, we will probably find something, but it's not going to be a product. It's going to be something that we will develop in-house, just a few jobs there and there to validate the configurations. But right now it's a blind spot, and I'm a bit worried that we're missing some data. That's not great, especially with the number of projects that we have to monitor. It's really hard to figure out if everything is going fine or not. Not I'm even sure the AppSec engineers are checking this new section that we have in the dashboard to see what's the latest pipeline that was used to generate the data. I'm not even sure they click on it to validate that it's fresh, that
Right.
it's
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say, continue with your plans to solve your own problem, because it's going to be a while before we have something ready for you. But eventually we'll want to have a solution that solves that problem for you, that you can dog food and give us feedback on. But yeah, timing, if you're running into that today, I would say go ahead with your, I want to call it a workaround, but your intermediate solution, because it'll be a while before we get to it.
Perfect. So we have Dominic that is trying to join us, but apparently this link at the top of the doc is invalid. The meeting ID is invalid, so it's
One at the top of the doc.
maybe.
Okay, I can update the one in the doc. The one in the invite worked for everyone else, I believe.
Yeah, that's a different one. I shared the other one with him.
Hey, Dominic.
There you go.
Hello.
Sorry about the broken link. We'll get that fixed.
Oh, that's on me. I should have taken the right link.
We should have our links right. So there was some other feedback on this topic that came in line. Wayne or Matt, did you guys have any comments? Maybe it was just note taking.
Oh, yeah, I was just capturing notes.
Okay.
Philippe, I am curious. So are you still looking at OPA for your dynamic policy rules?
Yes. I haven't done anything with OPA so far, but it's definitely something on my roadmap. Unless we come up with something that would be more generic, maybe Ruby, but I'm not even sure. So Dominic, to give you some context here, I'm talking about how we should monitor and validate the CI configuration when it comes to the secure jobs that we're configuring. The problem that I've seen last week, especially working with Michael on configuring secret detection, is that some jobs are configured in the CI configurations files, but actually they don't run because there are some collisions between the rules or things like that. And we think everything is configured, so we have this green tick in the table to indicate that it's configured and it's running smoothly, but actually nothing is running.
Yeah, that's probably on us when we set it up, that like having, sorry, the dog is complaining. Having it set up is not just like MR merged, but we should have looked at the pipelines, and I don't know how many projects this happened that it's not actually running, but yeah.
Not sure it's entirely on us, because sometimes it's just that the rules that are defined globally in the CI configuration have been updated and they impact the secure job as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that to, forgot her name. Someone interviewed me for a SaaS, like the usability, the UX of how setting it up is easy and all that. And that was one of my points where, yes, like setting it up in the sense of just copy paste the template and calling it today is super easy, but making sure, like integrating it in an existing project with complicated rules for MRs for when do each job run, as someone who's kind of external to those projects, not very familiar with any specific CI files, jumping into that, it's pretty complicated to get any secure job running to fit the existing workflow. They have like stages for the test, for the analyzers, for the when do they build the containers. Sometimes they'll have like they plan to have the SAST running before they create the container, but container scanning obviously has to be after. So you just introduce a whole new concept in their workflows. So just integrating existing workflows is very complicated and probably introduces those kinds of oversight.
Yeah, there's a good example in this documentation page. If in your project you are using the second version, so the merge request pipeline workflow, and you include that template, You can include your SAST template, your dependency scanning template, whatever. It's never going to run for any branch or any merge request. Silently. Just nothing happens. The jobs are not even scheduled. So it's still running in master, so that's the good news. But that means everything is going to fall on us, the AppSec team, because everything is going to be in the dashboard and we're not getting anything at the merge request level. So if we introduce a new dependency and that dependency is vulnerable, we would not see that in the merge request. We would see that in the dashboard, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks later, we don't know. Should be the week after, but you know, with the workload that we have lately, it could be much longer than that because of the triage time. And the agenda is completely open. So if you have anything else that you want to
completely
talk
different
about.
topic. Just something that popped in my mind, and I don't know if this is on plan one day. We recently had someone raise the fact that an issue about minimum TLS version not being enforced, blah, blah, blah. I know this is something that GoSec catches, and I've seen that issue in our dashboards. And I would have liked, instead of going to the dashboard to see if the issue exists, I would have liked in the file I know has the issue to see if there's a dashboard finding for that file, like going the other way around. I'm in the file for TLS configuration. I want to know if there are known issues in this file. Is this something you had thought about? Just wondering. Like I said, we started in MRs to have test coverage being highlighted. Like some lines are green, some are red, just to see, hey, tests actually cover this line. Some sort of similar annotation saying this line has a security issue. That would be fun.
No, I don't think anyone's actually requested that feature, but I'm kind of surprised. That sounds really useful to have a view like that. I can almost see annotating the whole directory structure, just pointing out files that have potential issues like that.
Yeah, and I think this would be a great step for us in the AppSec team to move, or at least share the responsibility of the dashboards to the teams owning that code. If when they're looking at the code, the code they own, they can immediately see their, in quotes, vulnerabilities, because now the dashboard is like 50,000 issues that nobody looks at. But if I'm working on this file, NuGet package uploader.rb that I'm coding, and I see, oh, there's a vulnerability here, and might do something about it. So yeah.
No, that's a fantastic idea. I will open an issue for that actually, and then I'll ping both you and Philippe on it so you can comment.
Cool.
Yeah, there's an issue for that. I'm looking for it, but
there is.
Of course, there is
Philippe
always
has
an issue.
issues for everything.
I have issues for everything, exactly. This one is probably almost 3 years old. Almost 3 years old. That's one of the oldest issues that we have created. And I've been telling that to Andy thousands of times, we need to see the code. Even if in the dashboard, when we see something that would be very useful for us to see the portion of code that is affected and being able to switch from one vulnerability to another in the code directly, pretty much like what you would have in the diff tab of the merge request. If we could see the code and directly annotations on the side to say you have a problem here, that's the graal for us.
So Philippe, we actually were just talking about that pretty recently, having that idea of expanding the snippet, basically using the same thing that we have in the MR, that snippet view, when there is a line number referenced on the vulnerability object. So that one is definitely on our radar. This other way around, Andy may have heard of this before. It's certainly new to me, but if there is not a good issue for that, that is definitely a cool feature.
Well, and even if there's a 3-year-old issue, it might behoove us to create a new one, because I think sometimes the conversation of people that aren't even with GitLab anymore, or that has gotten so old, it's hard to weed through. So,
But I want Philippe to feel validated that his old thoughts are still good thoughts. We've done a thing.
Yeah, because I created a mock-up for this issue, so you even have something to.
Well, then we have to find the original issue. I take it back entirely. Because I'm sure the mock-up is still accurate, given nothing else has changed in the last 3 years. That's great, Dominic. Thank you for suggesting that. Does anyone else have any other topics for this office hours? Otherwise, I have a final survey. What do you guys think? Question.
You know, I was thinking, Philippe, if you have time, it would be nice to go back to point number 1 and validate some of the prototypes that we have in place. But I don't want to rabbit hole this meeting. I think, Lindsay, we should probably take your question on feedback first. And Philippe, if you have time, I would love to stay on and chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So my question was just, this is our second office hours that we've had. Philippe, you came to the first one. Dominic, welcome. We're glad you joined us. If anyone on the call has any feedback on ways we can make this more effective.
You know, I was thinking about it today, and I'm wondering if we should put a link to this on some of our product direction pages, or maybe socialize it I don't know where else to socialize it, but find some other ways to socialize. I think it'd be nice to have more members of the community coming in.
Even within the GitLab community, I see some other office hours getting shared in more broad channels, and I think I could take on some of the actions there. As far as maybe community contributors or other security audiences, I'm open to put some footwork in, but need suggestions.
I mean, we tried to solve the same problem because Philip was the only person in our office hours, and now he's more on our side. So actually, we just wrapped all security teams' office hours into one. We had big attendance issues, and even posting in what's happening at GitLab didn't do much. Only have 2 or 3 people most. So I wish I had answers to ways to improve it. I mean, the format is good, but we just need people to feel involved and have stuff to bring. But
So sort of,
how frequently are you doing this?
2 weeks, every 2 weeks, and we're trying to alternate between the time. No, I haven't alternated the time of day. It's this time of day every 2 weeks. So there's a question about cadence and whether we should do more AMEA friendly hours versus APEC friendly hours, where we might be kind of in the middle of both right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like it's too late for Europe and it's too early for APAC.
So maybe we try to alternate, but I don't know if that doesn't really address so much as what you and Sam were heading on, of getting more of an audience, publicizing this better. And maybe that didn't work so well for the AppSec office hours, but
you have more people using a product instead of having security questions, so that I think you have more potential. But yeah.
Well, I love that it's been a 2-way street, and so thank you, specifically to Philippe for coming and sharing information about what's going on in your team here, and I think that makes it more valuable. All right, so I'm going to take a couple of actions from that, and I'm going to try and share this more broadly, whether it be in social media or other channels, and then also change the schedule to try and alternate to at least have an AMEA friendly and an APAC friendly call every month. So I'll let you guys reconvene your discussion, Sam and Philippe, about agenda item number 1, but I am going to drop. And I'll leave the.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll leave it recording too.
I wonder if we could even
Either way, if the recording stops, it's probably okay too.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.